Oh boy, it's the morning after a long night of madness, and craziness. We're going to talk about my initial thoughts and reaction to the events of My Hero Academia Chapter 364. But first off, if you haven't watched my full spoiler breakdown from yesterday, please go watch that before you watch this full video. You can click the card in the top right or click the link in the description. It's very important that you watch the full spoiler video before you get my thoughts on what happens in the spoiler video, so please go ahead and do that. And let's just get straight into it after the intro so we can get into all the details and everything about what I think about what's going on. I don't know if it's going to end up being a rant video, but let's see where it goes. Hit it! So I know for a lot of people, the elephant in the room is gonna be how I feel about this ongoing event in My Hero Academia, right? How I feel about Bakugo's death, the fake out death, and then him apparently being brought back by Edgeshot in My Hero Academia Chapter 364. Now, I've been pretty vocal about my thoughts about this whole thing ever since Bakugo was initially put away, and, you know, it's been a lot going on between here and Twitter and everything, but I stand pretty firm where I'm definitely not the biggest fan of these story decisions, right? And to break it down, I think people have the impression that I hate Bakugo for some reason, but that's not really the case. I feel like more so it's an issue of, well, if you're gonna do a fake out death for a character, right, where we have the page where Bakugo sees his own death with Shigaraki completely crushing him like a chapter or two before, that was a fake out death for a page turn. So that is literally meant to shock the audience from a narrative perspective. And then you follow that up right after with another death. You've written yourself into a place where, I mean, you don't want to do too many fake out deaths in a row. That comes off really poorly with a lot of audiences, right? Because then they feel like they're just being like shock baited. And you even see that sentiment online right now from people who don't necessarily have a problem for how he was brought back, and more so have a problem with just the fact that he was brought back, right? From a narrative sense. That tends to be how I look at things in the series of My Hero Academia, right? Like from a writing perspective of, well, if you're going to make all these choices as a writer, right, and do this, and that, and then lay things out in a certain way, then that does form sort of expectations, right, within the fan base for things that are going to happen or ways that you're going to handle certain things. With the whole Bakugo dying thing, it just became very apparent that it's like, well, now that you've kind of put yourself in this situation, Hori, if you go back on this, it kind of seems very, like, what was the point of doing it in the first place, you know? Like, there was really no point of doing it in the first place if this was going to be the result, especially after Bakugo's death was baited just a couple chapters before. And it's not necessarily that I want Bakugo to die. I mean, it could have been any character right now in Bakugo's place. Literally anybody. It could have been Genus, Mirko, anyone. Like, I would have just been like, this doesn't really make sense. You know, this is a dumb way to bring a character back to life. What was the point of even taking that character out? But because it happens to be Bakugo and people think, you know, dude bros hate Bakugo, even though really we think he's pretty raw, actually. People think that I hate Bakugo and that I want him dead for that reason, and I'm mad that Horikoshi isn't doing what I want, right? And it's not really that. It's more so that this just doesn't really make sense from a narrative perspective to do this, you know what I mean? To intentionally write yourself into this corner and then write yourself out of it, especially in the way that it was done. Because I've seen people's reaction wax and wane ever since last night and this morning on the whole thing about Edgeshot and Bakugo and Edgeshot, you know, becoming Bakugo's new heart. Now, the first defense that I see people have is instantly, well, we know that Edgeshot can go inside people's bodies. That's it. You guys should have known that he was gonna literally become another human being's heart. Literally physically become another human being's heart because he can fold his body and attack people. When you say this was never set up, it was never set up anywhere in the manga for Edgeshot to literally become a human organ. People's response is, well, he can get really small and attack inside of the body, so he can get in there. So, you know, of course he could get in there and become a heart. That's the thinnest little line of reasoning that you can take, and it just feels like Horikoshi definitely went out of his way to remove all the other possible ways for Bakugo to be revived, right? You got rid of all the healers, you got rid of Ares' energy, you took care of all that stuff so that you would have to be in this situation to bring him back in this very just strange, not really set up way. And as a fan, it's just very, very puzzling for that to happen, right? It's very, very puzzling for things to go in this direction. I just feel like there was no point in doing all this at the end of the day, right? Like, I really don't have all that much to say about it. I feel like I had an opinion of Horikoshi as a certain level of author, right? Following the series, often defending certain decisions because I saw that there was a narrative value to those decisions, right? Like, okay, this might not be the best decision, but I get why he went about handling it this way because it has this importance to the narrative. Or when you're writing a story, these are the kind of things that you want to do because this will enhance that later. So even if this isn't all that great, this later will be great. This just feels like you didn't need to do this at all. This is just a technique that authors use sometimes that I just don't agree with when it's used in general. And it's not just because it's Bakugo and My Hero Academia and I have some sort of grudge against Bakugo. Like, I clown Black Clover people when this happens in Black Clover. I clowned it when it happened in Fairy Tail. I clowned it when it happened in Naruto. Like, I've been around a very long time actually, and I'm pretty consistent with clowning something when it happens across different mediums, even if I like the series myself. So a lot of people tend to have a problem when you're very outspoken on a certain series, or you are very, very big in a community for a certain series and are known for being positive about it, and then things start happening that you don't agree with, and the same passion that you have for how much you love it is also now being shared with how much you dislike certain things. And I feel like people shouldn't expect to just have it one way. You're definitely going to have it both ways. I don't know about these other content creators or what they're willing to do, or if they're willing to bend to you guys or anything like that, but I've always made it a point to state my opinion and be clear with my opinion and say what I want and do the kind of things that I want to do. So with that, if I can be real and if I can defend My Hero Academia with all my strength on Twitter and online and in videos and talk about why I think decisions were good and why I think the series is one of my favorites and one of the better series that I've read when things are good, then when things are bad or when decisions are made that I don't agree with, I can also do the same in the other direction, right? And that's not really fair for people to try to say, you can't do that, you have to be positive, when actually no, criticism is necessary in the creative space. And it's all part of the discourse and discussion that goes on when consuming a series weekly. If you don't want to take part in discourse and you don't want to take part in opinions that are different from your own and you feel like the conversation is too hot for you to take part in, then you can take a break from My Hero Academia and then you can read it all to yourself once the series is over and all that active discourse and discussion isn't going on anymore. But as much as these events have kind of lowered my opinion of Horikoshi's writing in general, right, I feel like it's not the most dramatic because there's been a bunch of authors who, you know, you have a certain opinion of over the course of the series, and then near the finale, that opinion tends to change a little bit, right, as they start wrapping things up and making some questionable decisions. So this is kind of par for the course with reading shonen manga. You tend to be let down a little bit by your favorite mangaka at some point, or at least once in their entire run. So initially, whereas I was pretty annoyed about this decision overall, and annoyed that it finally seemed like a mangaka like Horikoshi, who has been sort of safe over the course of the series, was finally taking a very big risk, right? And it was something that definitely gained this series a lot of respect, and it's very hard to believe that he went back on that or did all of that just for the sake of what, really? You know what I mean? Like, if Bakugo gets back up, Shigaraki still one-shotted him, so it's still gonna not really be an easy fight. Maybe Deku will get there and them fighting together will be overwhelming for Shigaraki. I feel like there's other better places the story could have gone, but if you list any of them, people try to tell you that, you know, because it's not what you wanted, because you're not the writer, you're angry at what the writer did. And that's just simply not true. It's not because I want things to go exactly how I want them to go, because there's millions of times where I have theories or something, and then Horikoshi goes in a different direction, right, and does something even better than what I was theorizing, and I'm like, damn, that's better than what I was picturing, right? And then that's, of course, that's par for the course, because Horikoshi is a talented author in many respects, but I just feel like this is one of those situations where it's not because I said it, it's just he put himself in a situation where for any mangaka, if they did this and put themselves in this situation, I would feel the exact same way. So it sucks that it has to be Hori, but yeah, I'm gonna feel how I'm gonna feel about this. A lot of people in the fandom are gonna feel how they're gonna feel about this, and then a lot of other people in the fandom who really, really only care that Bakugo is back, right? They would have accepted literally anything. They would have accepted Shigaraki tapping Bakugo on the forehead and bringing him back to life with no explanation, right? Just to have Bakugo back. And those people are the ones who are going crazy on Twitter right now and defending it by any means necessary. And of course, in there are also people who just genuinely believe that, but there are definitely people who would have been happy with literally anything, and I'm just gonna tone those people out, right? Because you can't take people seriously when they have an agenda outside of the actual narrative, for me at least, because my agenda is always the narrative, right? Like, what serves a narrative, what does a disservice to the narrative. There are series that I read just because they're raw. There are series where I kind of turn my brain off and just enjoy, but My Hero is definitely a very, very good series for delving deeper than the surface level and finding a really rich tapestry weaved underneath the surface of the story that serves a much larger narrative at play. But now I feel like I'm gonna turn my brain off a little bit to a certain extent because I don't know, I can't really take it all that seriously at this stage. Maybe we'll see as things change and as things develop over time, if, you know, my opinion changes, because I'm not a rock, you know, my opinion can change from day to day and time to time. However, I'm just not really with this decision, and I just hope that now a bunch of meathead, raw stuff happens, like Bakugo doing a bunch of craziness and just high-scale nut activity, because that's, at least it'll be nice to watch, you know, at least it'll be fun to see when it's animated. So, yeah. So those are my thoughts on what Edgeshot did to Bakugo in chapter 364 of My Hero Academia. I know some people think, oh, maybe it'll fail, and it's just, that's not very likely, right? They're not going to do all this, and then it's damned if you do, damned if you don't at that point, right? So I definitely don't think this is going to fail. I do think Bakugo will likely return next chapter, and we're going to see what's going to happen then. People are saying maybe he'll die again. You just don't do stuff like that, right? So clearly he's going to be around. It's just, it is what it is. Now, any faith that I had for Horikoshi taking out any of the other students or anything like that, it's kind of out of the window, to be honest. So we'll see maybe if he does take care of things in those other areas. But for now, again, sorry, this is Pineapple, extended outro. I'll see you later. Peace.